there is the whole way it ended for Roger Ailes at Fox. And what was your experience with him in the whole Me Too harassment?
He would often talk about our looks. He would say inappropriate comments about my body. I wanted to anchor at Fox. I was a correspondent. I wanted to anchor, and Roger told me that if I were to do that, if he were to give me that chance, he would have to work with me very closely to get me ready to anchor, and that people would be jealous of me, and so that work one-on-one that he and I would have to do together might have to happen off-site at a hotel.
Stop right now. No.
Oh yeah. I had an out-of-body experience sitting in his office where I was hovering over my body going, this is the moment. This is the defining moment where my career's over.
Hi, friend. It's Daryn. Welcome to Call Me Friend, powered by Miss Lou's Cabin, an Airbnb property on a remote section of the Georgia coast. This is the podcast where I call a friend and you get one heck of an incredible story. Today, I am thinking about losing because it's possible you might be having one of those days where you feel like a big fat loser. I mean, we all have these days. So let's talk about losing. We all have these days where we feel like that kind of a loser. That is why I'm excited to talk to journalist, broadcaster, author, reinventor, all around badass woman, Alisyn Camerota. She is, frankly, a big loser. And I say that with complete admiration because as you'll see, it's not just about what Alisyn has lost, which is significant, including jobs, including her beloved husband. It's what she has done with it. We'll get to the Alisyn call in just a minute, but first, kind of a confession. I really don't know her. But here's the thing in the TV news business. It's kind of what I think is this unspoken rule that you kind of know people who you don't know. And to prove that point, I go back to a story 5 or 6 years ago. Trent and I were in Atlanta at our local favorite Thai restaurant back when we lived up in the big city. And I look across the restaurant and there's this woman, Lisa Ram. Now, Lisa Ram was like one of the big famous local news anchors in Atlanta. I admired her work. I watched her for years and I'd never met her. And so I say to Trent, I go, oh, look, there's Lisa Ram. I should go say hello. And he looks at me like a normal person and says, well, do you know her? And I said, well, no, but that doesn't matter. He goes, you can't just go up to someone who you don't know and say, hi, you don't know me, but hi. I go, actually, I think in the TV news business, you can actually do that. So he's doing one of these things where he's crawling under the table. The weirdo wife is going and introducing herself to people she doesn't know in this Thai restaurant. But I get up and I go over and I said, Lisa. And she looks at me. I said, yeah. I said, hey, we've never met. Daryn Kagan. I used to be on CNN. Oh my God. Blah, 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 blah. Lisa Ram and I had this moment in the middle of this Thai restaurant where now we know each other. There you go. Proving the point that in TV news, I don't know if it's like this, like if you're an accountant or a lawyer or sell insurance, if you see someone who works in the same business you don't know, can you go over and say hello? I can't speak for that. But in TV news, even all these years later, I believe that you can. So in the spirit of meeting Lisa Ram in a Thai restaurant in Atlanta like 8 years ago, let's call Alisyn Camerota. This episode of Call Me Friend is brought to you by Miss Lou's Cabin, an Airbnb property on a remote section of the Georgia coast. Do you ever go to a beautiful resort area and you long to know what it looked like before they paved paradise and put up a parking lot? Well, now you have your chance. Miss Lou's Cabin sits on 7 private acres on a tidal saltwater marsh about 50 minutes south of Savannah, Georgia. It is a place so quiet, you don't even hear road noise. Instead, what you will hear: pink spoonbills, wild dolphins feeding off your private dock, the breeze whistling through the Spanish moss that hangs from the countless oak trees all over the property. The porch overlooking the marsh is the perfect place to hang with family, read a zillion books, catch the sunrise, all while you stay in a restored log cabin that has all the comforts and amenities of a beautiful home. Miss Lou's Cabin. Check out the link in the show notes or simply Google Miss Lou's Cabin. and you'll find this piece of paradise. Well, hello there, friend.
Hello, my dear.
Can you believe, is it possible we have actually never met?
I guess that's what we've determined. I mean, I feel like I know you because I watched you for so many years. And as I was getting ready for this, we can talk about it on the air, but I forgot that you and I shared Bill Hemmer.
We do share Bill Hemmer. Mm-hmm. That is true. And that's a wonderful thing to share. He's a wonderful person to share. He's one of the good guys.
He really is. He was so sweet on your podcast. He was so unvarnished or whatever, because I think sometimes on the air, Bill is kind of like anchor man. He's so flawless. He's one of the most flawless anchors I've ever seen, that you forget that there's actually a real human in there. And I thought he was so real and lovely with you.
Thank you. Well, we kind of grew up together. We were the baby anchors at CNN, and he's good people. He knows my family. I know his family.
So lovely.
Yeah. Wait, so did we share him on the CNN side or the Fox side? Because you shared that with Bill.
I was on Fox for a year or two, or maybe just a year in the afternoon with Bill from like 1 to 2 p.m. Mm-hmm.
Because I would watch, and I told him this and reminded him of this, that we were each other's first, let's just say. So as he went on to other people, I would watch with a very careful eye. And, one thing about Bill is he does not talk shit about anybody. He says nice things about everybody. And let's be honest, everyone does not deserve nice things to be said about them. And so I would be like, watch out for that one. There's some, we don't have to name names here, but I think you might agree. There were some that he's been paired with that were not, shall we call them nice girls?
Oh, okay. Yes.
Okay.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yes. Yeah. Very good. But you and I would say we are kind of like CNN first cousins once removed, because not being there at exactly the same time, but doing very similar jobs in that morning time with similar people.
For sure.
Yeah. So that kind of makes us related, I think. It's part of the CNN family.
Oh, I definitely agree with that. And I also I would love to hear your thoughts on what it was like to be in that seat during the years and the era that you were.
I loved my time at CNN. Now, let me qualify that by saying it was pre-social media, pre-Trump, when CNN actually did news. It was the time where if you love to do news, which I did, there was no better place than CNN to get to see the world and do the world and the kind of access and the kind of journalism you got to do. I loved it. What about for you?
I loved it as well. I loved my time at CNN. I thought that it felt like we had real purpose. I felt my purpose. In order to get up at 3 a.m. every morning, you have to have a strong purpose, because it's hard as hell to do that, as you well know, every morning. So being there during the Trump campaign,
the first one,
leading up to it, all of these norms being broken, all of this, he obviously had such a different approach to running and trying to sift through that, trying to make sense of everything. Then I was also there during his first presidency. I was also there during COVID. And so I knew that people were relying on us. People told me that they were relying on us every morning to, turn on the news like, okay, what's happening? How many people have been killed by COVID? Is there a vaccine yet? And so I felt the importance of being in that slot, and I felt very supported, and I loved my co-hosts. I loved all of my coworkers. So I think it was a real golden era, and I feel lucky to have been there.
Yeah. And everything ends, every job ends, and that ended. For me, well, I like to say with CNN, I would still be sitting there if they hadn't kicked me out the door, which is the second best thing they ever did for me. First was, right? But that it was a good thing that they did for me, or that they kicked me out the door? Which one?
I didn't realize that they had kicked you out the door, but I just read that in preparing to talk to you.
Yeah.
And why did that end up being a good thing?
Because I feel like I was let go, literally let go to go do the next thing, including having a family, which I did not at CNN, have my own company, do all the things that I've gotten to do. I would not have done them if I was sitting there. And honestly, I wouldn't want to be sitting there now doing the kind of things that they do. Not whatever, they're doing what they do, but that wouldn't be good for me, just to sit there and talk about the same thing every single day. And in terms of why, I mean, okay, it's a little dramatic to say they kicked me out the door. They did not renew my contract after 12 years, as can happen. But I never asked why. And it was unusual. So tell me what you think about this as a fellow on-air person. So my contract was going to be up like November or December. They called me in January, like saying, hey, stop by my office when you get off the air. And they just said, we're not going to renew your contract. We have no intention to take you off the air now. I don't think we do. We'll let you know. So for 9 months, every day I came to work, I didn't know if that was going to be my last day. Usually with on-air people, when you're done, you're done. Like if they're going to take you off, even if they have to pay out your contract, you're out the door. But they kind of drip. Did you leave by your own choice, or what was your...
Sort of. I mean, sort of. There had been a big management change. Jeff Zucker, my beloved boss, was ousted. And so things started changing. The new management that came in was belt tightening, cost cutting, laying people off. It wasn't a happy time. When I was there, the golden decade that I was there was as I said, our purpose and a big sense of morale and a big sense of camaraderie. And I really loved that. That started to end. It was very unsettling when they ousted Jeff for all of us. And so it started to be less fun. It started to get a little less interesting. And then my husband was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And so I didn't want to come in. I didn't want to work every day, at going in every day. I had other priorities. So they were incredibly kind, incredibly flexible with me. So I could be home and not have to go in every day. And then, once my husband passed away, it just felt like that's not what I want to go back and do. And they also weren't, I didn't want to go back and do what I had been doing. They weren't offering anything new. They were changing. They were belt tightening. So it just didn't feel like it was a good fit anymore. I think for both of us, probably. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, I do have a bunch of questions about your husband and that experience. It feels a little awkward to say, Alisyn, so nice to meet you. Can I ask you about your husband dying? It feels a little speed dating. So we can go there now, or we can wait. So I'll follow your lead.
I totally know what you mean, Daryn, but it is the biggest earth-shattering thing to happen in my life. So it's kind of the elephant in the room. There's no really avoiding it. So I'm okay talking about it. Yeah.
Well, first tell me about him, the beloved husband, the love of your life, the man, the epic. Tell me about Tim.
Yeah, Tim was just, a man among men. I mean, he was.
How did you meet?
We were set up through friends.
Like blind date-ish?
A blind date.
Okay, so how was it pitched? How was it pitched to you? And like what space were you in?
I'd like to tell you, Daryn, because it was an unusual pitch, I would say. I was 33 years old. I'd had a long, successful, I would say, dating history. I had had lots of boyfriends, all of whom I think were great. I'm not somebody who's like, there's no good men out there. I felt there were a lot of good men out there, but I felt that I wasn't able to commit really long-term for marriage for a host of reasons, as I chronicle in my memoir, Combat Love.
Also, we will get to that. Yes.
So I had my reasons from childhood and teenagehood that I was kind of not able to be fully in on a relationship.
So you were the commitment problem, not the guys you would pick.
Well, I unconsciously or subconsciously picked guys who probably had intimacy issues in terms of commitment as well, but I wasn't necessarily doing that intentionally or knew that. And then the guys that I picked that were ready, I then dumped,
Yeah.
So
just say it what it is. Like,
yeah. I'm not
like,
proud of. I'm not proud of this era, but I do have an explanation for it. So I finally got my shit together emotionally at about 31 and 32. I did a lot of therapy. I connected the dots. I went back and retraced some old wounds. I got closure from my parents, and then I felt ready. But I didn't tell all my friends that. I mean, these were friends that didn't see me every day, so they didn't know that I was really like in my sandbox, in my emotional sandbox, doing all of the work. So when they pitched Tim to me, he was also 33, and I had heard about him through them because he was a close friend of my book club. I was in a book club of all women, and they went to college with Tim, and they would often talk about Tim. And so I'd heard about him, and when they pitched him, after 5 years of hearing about him, I said, is it time for me to meet Tim? And they said, oh, yes, it is time. He just broke up with somebody, and you'll love each other because he's a professional dater, just like you.
Oh, nice. And that's what they thought you had in common.
Yes, that we couldn't commit.
Yes. You guys are perfect.
This will work out beautifully. Yeah. You're both commitment phobes. So anyway, the truth is that it did work out perfectly. And we did have this phenomenal first date. And I don't know that it was that we were commitment phobes. It's that we weren't ready until that moment.
Yeah. So how long from that phenomenal first date, which was what, by the way, that made it so phenomenal?
I think readiness. Well, first of all, Tim was wildly handsome, which my friends had buried the lead on. Okay. So they didn't mention that. So when I walk in to the date, I was like,
and it's pre everything. It's not like you can look him up online. Yes.
I couldn't look him up. And I was like, what? Like he's Warren Beatty. Like they didn't
Could you have mentioned that? Yes.
I know. Yeah. I was like, I would have maybe changed out of my stupid business suit that I just wore on like a job interview. I was so... I didn't think it was going to work, but theoretically, I didn't think that this first date was going to work because I didn't think that Tim was going to be my type.
Yeah. A finance guy.
No, he was a consultant. It wasn't that he was a finance guy. It was that I thought he was going to be too normal, too straight,
boring.
Just too kind of. All of my friends who introduced me have these wonderful husbands who are like environmentalists and Ivy League graduates and solid salt of the earth men. And I was like, are any of them in a rock band? And so
spice it up or something. Yeah.
So that I just didn't think that it would be an intense love match.
Yeah.
But I also was probably protecting myself, honestly. And Tim would tell the story that as he was getting ready for our date, he felt a little bit sad, and so did I. I was flying out he was in Chicago. I was flying from Boston to Chicago, and I remember on the plane feeling a little bit sad, and he says he felt a little sad getting ready because he thought, oh, tonight the fantasy is over.
Oh, yeah. I know that.
This person that we've both heard about and held out as like maybe someday, tonight you meet the reality and it's going to be over. And then it like exceeded our fantasy, our expectations.
But living in different cities.
Yes, but that doesn't scare me.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so how long after that phenomenal first date in Chicago did you guys get married?
So we got engaged 9 months later and we got married 9 months after that. Because, when you're ready, you're ready.
And you just do it.
That was,
And then kids right away?
Well, I tried to have kids right away, Daryn, but it didn't work. And I had to do 2.5 years of infertility treatments, and which are, a hell, a living
while
hell.
Working in news and crazy hours and the whole bit.
Yeah. And I thankfully got pregnant with twins, so through IVF. So we had
those are your girls.
Those are my girls, yeah. So we had them 3 years after we got married.
And then there's a boy
and then I had a surprise pregnancy, as one does.
Yes.
After going through the hellish infertility treatments where you don't think you'll ever be able to get pregnant, then I, of course, had a surprise baby. And that's my son who's 19, yeah.
That's crazy. And so it's this beautiful life and your career's doing well and you've got this wonderful marriage. And then A phone call,
Yeah.
a checkup? Like what's the moment that everything changed? Like that your world changed?
Yeah. Totally incidentally, Tim was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He had a kidney stone. And so he went into the emergency room because he was in mortal pain with the kidney stone. And they did an ultrasound and said, yes, you do have a kidney stone, but you also have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And he had no symptoms or anything.
And that I think is the moment your life changes. Is that?
Oh, I mean, it blew. It doesn't just change. I mean, it blows. A grenade was thrown into our lives. A grenade. So that was Tim. Tim passed away 18 months ago. He was diagnosed 2 years before that, roughly 2 years before that. So our lives have been, for the past 3.5 years. All of our lives have been completely ruptured. There's been a huge explosion. And I'm just now, I don't know if the right word is putting the pieces back together. I'm just now recovering, I guess.
Which is an ongoing process. Let me say, I'm so happy for you that you had this love, that you got to experience this love. And I'm so sorry for everything that you and your family have been through. And it's all true at the same time. One does not negate the other. The loss does not negate this incredible love and this incredible marriage and fatherhood and everything that you've had and you had, right? I mean, he's not erased, but it's certainly changed. And you did not know you were signing up to be a single mom and a mom of kids going through things. And therein, I kind of see themes of your life, right? Like you have all these swings, like you grow up being a punk rocker, and then you're in traditional journalism. You're at Fox, then you're at CNN. You're in this great love affair, and now you have grief. It's like, you know how to swing it, lady.
Well, first of all, I've learned that, I've written about this on Substack, about the duality of grief, that you have to hold all of these things at the same time: gratitude and grief, loss and joy, laughter and tears. Like now my life is all of those things at once. And so that's different. I used to, I think, be able to be capable of just one emotion, but now it's potpourri at all times. So yeah, I mean, I don't know that they were great swings in my life so much as I did do unexpected, unconventional, I guess sometimes. Yeah, I guess unconventional. I took an unconventional path for sure. To be clear, I wasn't a punk rocker. I was in love with a punk rock band. So I was a groupie. I was a groupie for a local band.
A punk rock groupie.
Pretty much, yeah. A super fan, I guess. More, yeah. And that did change the trajectory of my life because I followed them. I think that I, before that, was, seen as a very studious, kind of nerdy only child. And that definitely forced me to be more of a risk taker and be in more dangerous situations. And frankly, I mean, as I write about in the book, I do think it laid the groundwork for my journalism career. I do think that learning to be super resourceful, gritty, hide in the footwell of a car, which we've had to do in news whenever you're on a stakeout. I already knew how to do that from hiding out of CBGBs, And so all of that stuff, I think, gave me some grit that I would not have otherwise had for our journalism career. And I'm sure you feel the same way. I mean, you were at all sorts of different breaking news situations in some, far-flung war zone areas, wherever news was happening. That takes a certain level of mettle. And you have to, if you're not born with it, and I don't think I was, I had to cultivate that.
I think so. Also, our early news backgrounds are a little bit different. You had some early network opportunities to come out through that way. I did the traditional start in market size 113. And then I was 5 years in Phoenix, where if you were blonde, you were the anchor. If you're brunette, you were a reporter. So you can imagine what my job was, reporting in 122 degrees. Little kitten heels walking across the pavement as they sink because it's so hot. But to your point, it's the exact same. It's situations you find yourself in that you got to figure out how you're going to do it. And some of the stuff you pick and some of the stuff kind of picks you of what you're going to do with that.
But Daryn, let me ask you this, because I read a little bit about your trajectory, and I know that in Phoenix, wasn't that where your news director was like, and you'll never be an anchor. You're no anchor. No, thank you. Like, didn't he just explicitly say no to the possibility that you would anchor?
The quote was, there's this it. In television, there's this it, and some people have it and some people don't. And clearly you don't. So why would you dream of being anything else besides a really good reporter in Phoenix?
And I'd like to hear the addendum to that story. So did you ever circle back once you were an uber successful anchor on CNN? Did you ever circle back with that gentleman and be like, maybe I do have it?
Well, I'll say two things on that. One, he did circle back to me. I was doing live coverage. Remember when JFK Jr.'s plane went down with Carolyn Bessette, which is a very hot story now because of is it on Hulu? What's the?
FX.
Because of the FX series. But when that was actually happening in real life, I was covering that breaking news. I was on the set for that. And I remember looking over and seeing an email from him saying, I'm so proud of you. Look at you doing breaking news on CNN. But I will also say, other perspective I have is, to give him some credit, is he took it wasn't even like a number 3 station in Phoenix. It was like number 10. Like, he got hired and took the station and made it a solid number 1. So it is possible that in Phoenix, Arizona, I did not have it to be a news anchor. So there's different places to have it. So when I talk about that, what I like to tell people is, it could be entirely true. They could be entirely right, but then just pick your ass up and go someplace where you fit better. It's CNN. When I got hired, I got hired as a sports anchor. So I did sports for 3 years for them. And then Rick Kaplan, a change of management, got hired, and he called me in and he said, the sports thing is cute, but have you ever thought about doing news? And I said, well, that's what I really do. I just kind of made up the sports thing by working weekends in Phoenix to get out of there. And he's like, oh, I'd like to make you one of my news anchors, but do you have any reporting experience? Because I don't like reporters who just read, anchors who read. I need anchors who can report. And I said, well, that's all I was ever allowed to do in Phoenix. So he goes, okay, well, I'm going to pair you with Bill Hemmer. And that's how my Bill experience began.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think you're right, of course. I think that not everybody is a fit for every place, for sure. There have definitely been places that I felt immediately I did not have an affinity for, and I felt out of sorts the whole time that I was there. But I also do know the difference between being, tolerated and being celebrated. And I think that generally when somebody says you don't have it, you get the message, okay, I'm going to be moving on now because I'm going to go someplace where I'm celebrated. Yeah. And everybody should do that.
If you can, that station made me sign a 5-year contract with no out.
Ugh. Ugh. That sounds awful.
Yeah, at $19,000 a year. I've said this on this podcast before, like Diane Sawyer could have dropped dead. ABC could have called and said, we want Daryn. They went, no, she is under contract for another 3.5 years. She will not be leaving.
That's amazing, Daryn. I mean, I don't think you didn't have an agent then. An agent wouldn't have let you sign onto something like that, would they?
I did. But I'd started in Santa Barbara, market 113. I got, after 2.5 years, that station was sold. I was laid off there. I'd been out of work for almost a year. So I needed a job. So Phoenix, going from market 113 to market, what was 19 then, to, I signed. I signed on that dotted line. And you know what? Again, perspective, it was very good for me because, again, it was a station. It had all the toys. It had the satellite truck. It had the helicopter. They traveled. They did stories. They did things. They actually were very good. I learned how to be a storyteller. I was better served spending 5 years in Phoenix than I would have been 2 years in San Antonio, 2 years in Cleveland, 2 years somewhere else. So here we are.
I like that perspective. I just don't like the $19,000 salary.
I don't. I did not like that.
I don't
as well. I did not like.
I mean, I don't like that at a size 19 market. Obviously, I made less than that in my first job, and that's fine. And you have to pay your dues, and of course, we all understand that. But with what you were doing and the level you were working, I don't like that salary.
Okay, we're going to call him. You're going to go fight my battles for
Give
me.
me that guy's name, please.
50 years from now, Alisyn will be like, I don't like how you treated him. Well, another professional question. You're among a special club that have worked at both CNN and Fox. We mentioned Bill, but there's, off the top of my head, Greta Van Susteren, Paula Zahn, Ed Henry, different story. What was your experience working? Like, how would you compare good things, bad things at both? Do you get asked about that a lot?
I get asked about that a lot. They're very, very different. They're very different places. In my experience at Fox, it was never about journalism. I had a million conversations with Roger Ailes about what he wanted me to do on the air, and never was one about journalism. It was
what did he want you to do?
He wanted me to look a certain way. He wanted me to think like a conservative, he told me all the time. You need to appeal to conservative women. You could be an icon for conservative women. I was like, yeah, or I could just be neutral and be listening to both sides. And he did not like that. I mean, he and I got into several heated discussions, I guess, on his part, that he had a worldview and he didn't think that I was comporting with his worldview, because I wasn't, actually.
Yeah. But he wasn't wrong. That's to the point of, like, he wasn't wrong.
Well, I mean, he was wrong. Yeah, he wasn't wrong about me. He was right, but he was wrong in that basically Roger Ailes was never a journalist. He was running a so-called news organization, but he was not a journalist. He was a political operative. He had worked for Nixon. He worked for Bush. That's what he was. He was a Republican political operative running a network. So the idea that just because it has news in its title, that it's journalism, in my experience, it was not. It wasn't following the rules of journalism at all. They often used completely crackpot sources. They didn't use two sources. They certainly didn't use credible sources. And Roger wanted us anchors to reflect his worldview, which was Republicans are good, Democrats are dumb, Barack Obama is dangerous. I could go on the litany of things that he felt very, very strongly about and wouldn't compromise on. And so none of that's journalism. It's interesting television, and I learned a lot of interesting TV tips from Roger. I do think that jewel tones pop on the air. I'm glad he taught me that. I do think that people watch often with the sound down, so you have to watch your body language. I do think that one of the things he taught me, which I've always carried with me, is the best question you can ever ask as an anchor is why? And I hear all the time on every network, anchors ask these, multi-dimensional, multi-syllabic questions of compound sentences.
Word salad.
Talking about all they know about the Middle East, and they could just say to the guest, why? Why is that? Yeah. How's that going to work? And so there were things I took away, but it wasn't, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, as they say, with how troublesome I found Roger. So then I get to CNN, and it is a real journalistic enterprise where there's real rules, and you have to follow them or you get fired, and you have to have a huge adherence to facts and have your facts sewn up and have statistics that back it up. So that was a relief, actually, to go back to a place where the rules were being followed.
Two more questions before we leave Fox. One, speaking of the juice being worth the squeeze, there is the whole way it ended for Roger Ailes at Fox. And what was your experience with him in the whole Me Too harassment situation?
Roger was very loose with boundaries. And so he would often talk about our looks. He would say inappropriate comments about my body. He propositioned me. Well, proposition is probably too soft a word for. I thought that the way he was phrasing, I wanted to anchor at Fox. I was a correspondent. I wanted to anchor, and Roger told me that if I were to do that, if he were to give me that chance, he would have to work with me very closely to get me ready to anchor, and that people would be jealous of me. And so that work one-on-one that he and I would have to do together might have to happen off-site at a hotel.
Stop right now. No.
Oh, yeah.
So, but you did anchor. So wait,
Oh, and so Roger and I had a long-term affair. No, and so
and you're hearing about it now. No,
I'm here to announce it on your podcast.
But I went to a hotel room with Roger and Ailes.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was petrified. I've talked about this when the whole Me Too thing happened. I've told this story already. I had an out-of-body experience sitting in his office where I was hovering over my body, going, "This is the moment. This is the defining moment where my career's over. Like this is it. Here it is. This is where the rubber meets the road, and I'm gonna either be fired, depending upon my response, or never get a chance to anchor, and I'm locked into a contract." And so he said, "Do you understand what I'm saying?" And I said, "Yes, I do understand what you're saying." And he said, "Okay, so we understand each other." And I said, "Yeah, I think we do." And I was at that time working in Boston. He was in New York. And so I left there not knowing, how is this going to work? Am I going to get a call from him to meet him somewhere? Am I going to get a call from his assistant? Do his assistants set up an offsite meeting at a hotel? Like I left petrified. Like I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to be fired. I mean, I knew that the bottom line was I was never going to go to that hotel, but I didn't know what the next.
You knew that.
Well, I knew that. I knew that under no circumstances was that of any appeal or even concept to me. But I didn't know what was going to happen next. And what I now know happened next was he preyed on women who were closer. I mean, luckily I was hundreds of miles away, and there were women in New York that he preyed on more actively than that.
See, long distance played a good part.
It helped.
It helped. And so how did, again, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I do think it's also important I don't think I'm not saying anybody would judge you on what your response was, but I think it's important for people to understand when we were coming up, it was a different environment. And I'm not saying that it was ever okay for a boss to do that. But in terms of someone commenting, that same news director in Phoenix, when I was at the first meeting in his office, he told me he could hang a sign above his door that said, "No ugly faces need apply." This whole, your body, what you look like, comments, people touching you, it was just different. It was part of what you kind of just put up with. It just
completely. I mean, we learned in our day, we learned how to navigate around through that, sticky wicket, for lack of a better term, of a landscape. But it's funny, Daryn, when Me Too happened, I was I was, well into my career at that point. And that was the first time that I thought, oh, we didn't have to tolerate that. And, that's not actually a badge of honor. I mean, I considered it a badge of honor that I had navigated my way through that minefield, but it's actually illegal. Yeah. We didn't have to tolerate that. So that was, Me Too, I hope, changed a lot of things. I think that it certainly changed things that year and in the subsequent years. But I hope it hasn't gone back to, some sort of level where people can operate like that with impunity. I hope it's been changed permanently.
How did it end at Fox?
I desperately wanted out. I didn't want to play Roger's games anymore. I didn't like being called into his office because he thought that I was sitting awkwardly. These are the kinds of things that I would get called into his office for. I looked uncomfortable sitting during a discussion about Sarah Palin, and I didn't look like I supported her. I was like, it's not my job to support her, Roger. I mean, I had to have these conversations with him. Like, I'm not supposed to be supporting her. These were the fights that we would get into. And so I just had enough. I thought that he was kind of a tyrant. I mean, also all the inappropriate stuff, but whatever. And finally, I had an opportunity to jump out because I'd been passed over for the morning show several times because Roger didn't think that I was conservative enough. And I was just like, let's call it a day. Yeah. Let's be done with this. But even when Roger didn't like your politics or didn't think that you were adhering to his worldview, he still wanted to keep a doll on the shelf. He still wanted you in his sandbox. So he wouldn't let me go. And we fought about it for about 6 months. And finally, it's funny, Daryn, that you were saying that you were told that you were going to be cut from CNN, but they kept you on the air for 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
That's not always wise, because what happens is the worker gets disgruntled, as I
That's
did.
exactly.
Right. And so
Yeah.
I started just spouting off like, this place is nuts, like, I don't know how, I was like,
Fire me,
I was
please.
not a great person. I was
Yeah.
not a great person to be around in the hallways. And so they agreed with me at some point that it was time for me to go.
They let the inmate out of the asylum.
Yes.
Finally. Some big things I need to ask you about. First of all, your book. No, 3 things. First with the book, Combat Love. Why, when, how?
It's my memoir. It's the story, as I said, of my turbulent teenage years. It's the story of me searching for home, searching for community. That's been a theme throughout my life. Searching for attachment. That's been a theme throughout my life. The arc of it is I desperately wanted that, and I find it with Tim. It takes me that long to be searching for family and home and attachment, and thank God I find it, And so, but it wasn't easy. There's some colorful 80s moments in there, and dangerous, I guess I would say, dicey situations for sure that I was in. When people would hear about my past, they were always shocked. And they would say, wait, you left home at 16? And what did you do? And you were broke?
And you're a groupie and what?
And so I thought, okay, it's time to peel back the curtain, and people will be interested to hear how I got from that, some desperate times to this success. And I always like hearing about people's backstory and struggle. So I decided to publish it, and I'm really happy that I did that.
Well, we will definitely have a link in show notes so people can find that. We're going to sell a bunch of your books. That's on the list. That's on my to-do list. Sell a bunch of Alisyn's books. Also, you're doing this reinvention gathering. Something that's near and dear to my heart. So tell me about that. What is it, and who can go, and all the things?
Well, Daryn, I know that you yourself are a reinventionist, so I would love to, at some future one, I'd love for you to come anytime, but I'd even love to have you as a speaker at one of them. So I'm doing this reinvention retreat. It's in the Catskills in New York. It's on the weekend of April 10th through the 12th. So basically, I'm in the middle of, as you and I discussed, a complete reinvention. In 1 year, I lost my husband. I left my traditional TV news career, and I became an empty nester. And so I have had to rebuild and reinvent and rethink everything about my life and what I want to do now. So I'm in the process, I personally am in the process of this rebuilding and reinvention. And it turns out so many women are in their 40s and 50s and 60s. So I figured, let's all do this together. And it'll be filled with lots of very cool self-assessment exercises, clarification exercises, life mapping exercises, cool art projects, creative sessions. So I think that it'll be a fun community that weekend.
Sounds amazing. Well, I'm RSVPing, yes, probably for a future one. Maybe too soon for this one, but I'm in. It's something I've believed in since leaving CNN. For me,
you've done it successfully.
I have, but I think to your point, I think we all need to do it. Most women are not going to be a network news anchor and need to go on and rebuild their career, but everyone has something that ends. Even if you're like a stay-at-home mom and your kids leave, that's a reinvention. If we all lose something, and so then what do you do? And it's going to happen. It just happens in the process of a life. We know that we've got to go get educated. We know we have to save for retirement. We know these things are coming, but I think this reinvention chapter is coming, and we need to support ourselves more as women. So I applaud you for putting that together. If nothing else, to call it out. If you just knew when things end that it was like, oh, okay, because things end, rather than just the devastation that comes with that. I think that helps.
Yeah, I agree. And I like how you phrase that. My reinvention has been born out of loss, for sure. But there are also people who are just at a crossroads. It doesn't, I agree that everybody needs to get their mindset around loss will come to every life. Yeah. It will. So don't be surprised. That's part of life. This will happen. So I like that you're framing it that way, but you can also be at a crossroads not born of loss, just born of ready to do something different.
Yeah, things don't fit. Something. So you have this great show, this great gig with scripts. You like the best part of news. If it's news,
I know.
Is it news? Do you consider it news?
It's not news in a traditional breaking news sense. It's not news in a traditional daily news sense. And I never loved those things about news anyway, to tell you the truth. I wasn't somebody who, at the first sight of breaking news, loved to grab my go bag and jump on a plane. I dove under a desk and hid while they were picking people to go. But what I have always loved about our career is being able to meet cool people and hear their backstory and have access to people and have them be willing to share their story. That is such a privileged position that we get as journalists. So that's what this is, this new Scripps show. It's called Connected with Alisyn Camerota. It's a half an hour sit down, pretty uninterrupted, deep conversation. There's no commercial. I don't have to take a commercial break during the 24 minutes that I talk to them. And everybody, Daryn, as you know, has some backstory of pain, loss, a struggle, but you don't necessarily know that because of their public-facing persona, where it looks like things are rosy, but if you peel back the curtain, there's something really interesting there, and they've gotten through it. And I'm just very, at the moment, interested in hearing what those coping skills are and how people have gotten through grief, how they've coped with loss. And I find it inspiring and really the connective tissue between us. And it just feels like the perfect show for me personally at this moment, but also for the country, in that everybody's craving connection and we're all so fractured. So I'm really happy for this opportunity.
And amazing how much we have in common when everybody wants to think about what we don't. And I'm sure that comes out. Well, we have a segment on this podcast that is called Asking for a Friend. And what that is, I figured I get to call on this podcast such great friends. Why should I just have access? And what I usually do is I take a question from a listener that would give kind of Dear Abby, like, this is a specific thing. But I decided in this case, I wanted to kind of focus it more on you. Actually, I'm going to take advantage of having you here. Asking for a friend. What is the best thing someone can do and say when someone is facing loss like you have? Like, what's the dumbest thing anybody said since the loss of your husband? Let's start with that.
Well,
without naming names. Yeah. Like,
okay. Here's the dumbest thing someone has said.
Okay.
It was a doctor that I went to who said, how are you feeling? And I said, exhausted. And she said, why? And I said, grief. And she knew my husband had passed away. And I said, grief. And she said, oh God, I really hope that doesn't happen to me. And I said, yeah, I'm sorry, you hope grief doesn't happen to me? She goes, no, I hope my husband doesn't die. I go, oh, he's going to.
This just in.
I had to tell a doctor that her husband was going to, I had to break the bad news to her, that her husband was going to die. She was not aware of that.
A medical doctor.
A medical doctor thought that she and her husband were going to dodge the bullet of death somehow. And I said, oh, he's going to. I couldn't believe I was having this conversation. But these are the blinders on that, I think you and I were alluding to before. People think that mortality isn't going to knock on their door, or that loss isn't going to knock on their door somehow. And she said, no, I know. But I just mean, prematurely. I was like, okay. I don't know what to do with that. You can hope it away. Okay, go for it.
Yeah, and I was hoping my husband wasn't just going to get suddenly diagnosed with pancreatic cancer either.
Yeah, right. That's right. I think we can all agree that we're hoping against that. But that's not helpful. That was not a helpful conversation.
Yes.
I think that's
a kind way to put it. That was not a helpful conversation. So on the opposite of the spectrum, what has been the most helpful thing that somebody has ever said to you following the passing of your husband?
I think for me, it's just here again, talking to other people who've gotten through loss. So I don't like to feel pity.
Okay.
I don't like to feel othered. I don't like people to say things like, "Oh, I hope that never happens to me," as though I'm on my own island.
That would be a no. Yes.
That would be a no. And so, but meaning like, that's very like, you're in a different category than I am, And I don't like that. And so I really have liked being around people who can relate. And it isn't just the loss of a spouse, though I really like being around people who've lost their spouse, because that is a particular kind of loss and we speak the same language. But just people who have come through a sad or devastating loss and can let me know that there'll be light at the end of the tunnel and that, I will experience joy again. Hearing people's stories, having somebody share their experience rather than just ask me questions has been helpful for me.
Very good. Well, so that was helpful for me to know that. But so if it's somebody who can't offer that, what's just a good thing to say?
Well, I think that in the early stages of loss, in the early stages, I appreciated people just coming by and bringing food and leaving it for me, and not, again, I didn't want too much interaction. I felt that the community was so sad about the loss of Tim that I was often having to hug them and comfort them, and that took a lot. That level of grief took a lot. It added to my grief. Yeah. So I just appreciated people knowing that I must be hungry, knowing that I must need, a tray of lasagna or coffee, and coming and dropping it off with a nice note. Like, that was very helpful for me. And then just people being around physically and inviting me to do things, but not too much expectation. Lower your expectation for the grieving person. They can only do so much every day, and it's a fraction of what they used to be capable of.
And what they might be capable of going forward, but right now, cut them some slack.
Yeah.
It's basically, I love that. Yeah. Well, a couple of questions I ask everybody I call for this podcast. One, since it's about friendship, I would love to know who is the friend who has had the great impact on your life, or the friend that the world needs to know about.
Oh. So either one.
Yes. It could be the same person.
Okay. So I have always really relied on my friends. I'm an only child. I grew up as an only child. And so I have often used my friends as my surrogate family. They're very important to me. I talk about that a lot in Combat Love. I lived with my friends for much of my high school experience. And so I've had a friend, one of my dearest friends in high school is named Beth. And I grew up in New Jersey. People are famously kind of unfiltered, I think, in New Jersey, and blunt, and they say it like it is. And she was always like that. She just never, she didn't, I think in our job, sometimes we have to be very diplomatic. Sometimes we've learned how to engage in corporate speak. We've learned how to kiss bosses' asses and say things that we have to say. But Beth just never played by those rules. And so nowadays with grief, I find her so helpful because there's no pretense, there's no filter. No filter. There's no varnish where you have to say nice things or make small talk. I try to adopt a page from that and just be really clear about how I feel and be as honest as possible with people. And that's been a good lesson for me now at this stage.
I love that. And speaking of things that you love, after we go deep and share and honest, I love to end on a completely superficial note as to what is the thing you are recommending to friends right now. It can be a beauty product, a social media account, a show, piece of clothing, I don't know, whatever, a book. So what's the thing that you're saying, oh, you've got to check out? Besides Combat Love, because we've done Combat Love, we're all going to recommend that.
Okay, I have two things.
Okay.
This one is very, very heavy, but I think it's really vital. So I've become close friends with a guy named Eli Sharabi, who I had interviewed several weeks ago. He was one of the hostages taken on October 7th by Hamas. He was held for 491 days in brutal captivity, tortured, starved, beaten, just the most brutal, barbaric treatment you could ever imagine. His immediate family was killed on October 7th. He has this a best-selling book that I read to prepare for it called Hostage. He's on a global book tour. And I have talked to a lot of people about this because it just gives an insider perspective and account of what that hideous experience was like and why what's happening in the Middle East is happening. I mean, I think that, as Americans, we can be so distant often from it. And it's hard to be distant when you hear his story and read that book.
Okay. So I'll have a link to his book.
That's a great idea.
Book.
But it's very, it's a devastating story. So that's very heavy. Here's on I guess, a lighter note.
Yes.
I just saw a documentary called That's the Way God Planned It about Billy Preston, who was basically the fifth Beatle. He's unsung. I mean, that's a pun.
Yeah.
He was an incredible musician. Musicians know him, the Eric Claptons of the world, and the Beatles went to him. He was a guru, basically. And it is so, watching him play the piano and sing and dance is so uplifting. He had a complicated and in ways tragic story, but watching him in his virtuosity of his art, I can't stop thinking about this documentary called That's the Way God Planned It. It's just a beautiful documentary about it.
I love it. Who has that?
I saw it in the theaters. So I think right now it is in the theater, but of course it will be released to streaming soon. But if it's in one of your art house independent theaters in your neighborhood, immediately go see it.
You're so retro. You go to a movie theater to see a movie.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
Amazing.
Yes. Pretty cool.
You're amazing. And then so I'll add to one superficial note. For people who aren't watching on video, you're having a fabulous hair day. Your hair looks great.
Daryn, thank you very much for noticing that. I literally was upstairs thinking, wow, this is a lot of hair for a podcast. That's what I was just thinking upstairs, because I went last night to the big announcement scripts upfronts, as we call it, where all the advertisers come in and get to hear about all of the new shows. So I got to tell them about Connected with Alisyn Camerota, and I got to be on stage and do this panel. So what you're actually seeing is glamour hair.
Glam hair.
From last night that I have slept in.
Yes.
So I don't normally have hair that's this glamorous for a podcast, but thank you for noticing it.
Well, I'm glad to have the after effect of it. And you get even bonus points because this is slept on glamour hair.
Yes, it is.
If it had been me, I'd be it would be going 12 different directions. So you were rocking it, girlfriend, and you're looking great. I'm so glad now we really do know each other. And we really are friends. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but I am actually Daryn Alisyn. Alisyn is my middle name.
I did not know that.
That is true. Daryn Alisyn Kagan. If you saw any scripts from CNN, they all say DAK, D-A-K, which is what my friends call me. And everything gets DAK.
They call you, your nickname is DAK? Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Yeah. My real friends, almost nobody calls me Daryn.
Really?
I've never even said that on this podcast.
It is.
DAK.
And that's what I'll be calling you.
There you go. And I'll be calling you. So Alisyn, thank you so much. This has just flown by. I've had the best time. And
me too.
Our first, not our last get together and call.
Thanks, Daryn. It's
Thanks
so great
for sharing
to
much.
With you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
I just love that conversation with Alisyn Camerota. And see, that is why you go across the restaurant, the Thai restaurant, and say hello to Lisa Rayam. And why you pick up the phone and you call somebody like Alisyn, because a great connection is just that one step away. Some things I'm going to be checking out after we wrap up here. Her book, Combat Love, which we will have links. You will find links in the show notes for that. Her reinvention seminar, which honestly might have already passed by the time that this episode posts. But as I told her, as we were saying goodbye, I really think it's just her first one, not her only one. So if you're interested in reinvention and that theme, got to look into that, into her next seminar. And her show, Connected with Alisyn Camerota. She has some amazing guests. And as you can see from the conversation that she and I had together, she's an amazing conversationalist. It'll be great to hear her on the side of the one asking the questions. So please check all of those things out. Also, some things to check out. Any comments, any likes or subscriptions or anything like that that you can do for this episode, so very appreciated. And I would love to hear from you. I checked in before I came on for this episode. There was not a single message on my phone line. Let's change that. You can text or you can call me, and the number is 912-766-0446. Let me know what you think about any episode. Let me know some friends you think I need to interview, any guests. What would you like me to ask for asking for a friend? Anything you're suggesting. I would love to hear from you. So give me a call. Stay tuned. And I just really appreciate you. Looking forward to the next time we chat. Thank you, friend. You've been listening to Call Me Friend. Executive producers for the show are Alisyn Cagan and me, Daryn Kagan. The show is produced by Produce Your Podcast and Journeyist Inc. Production by Abe Falek, Tammy Gagno, and Rob Paw.
Before you go, Call Me Friend is more than a podcast, it's a community. So head over to callmefriendpodcast.com to join the conversation. Or you can call or send a text to 912-766-0446, and you can leave Daryn a message there, or maybe even share a story of your own. Because when life gets real, you don't have to go it alone. Call a friend. Call this friend.